All right, guys. Hey, guys. Welcome to the show, High Top Sports. We are here with Shannon Terry from On3, as well as David Soderquist. Obviously, Shannon, a lot has been running around with On3 and your new update to the rankings that came out. Florida Gator fans are upset. Obviously, Dave and I, we are Gator fans ourselves. We had a video where we kind of discussed what happened, some tweets that you were referring to. We obviously made a response to that video. You tweeted at us. So here we are now. This is kind of catching everybody up to date in a short form. So we'll kind of open up the floor up to you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Hey, great having me on. I'm glad you guys responded. I always like the opportunity to, talk about our business and our processes. So welcome it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I appreciate you reaching out and obviously allowing us to have this conversation and ask questions. To preface the video that was quoted and whatnot, obviously, just like anything, like your tweets and whatnot, everything's always kind of taken at a piece of a pie, and then it keeps getting cut down. You kind of referenced the video that I said, hey, there wasn't any interviews, or it's all just a kind of assumptions, which in the video I say, hey, look, this is what it's starting to look like. And I don't think it's in that video, but I state that, look, perception starts to become reality. And that's kind of where Florida Gator fans are starting to feel. I even prefaced when the video started, which obviously is in that clip, where I said, look, this noise about On3 being biased it's not nothing new. I think you prefaced that just a minute ago. Like, you've been doing this for a long time, so this isn't anything new. And I've heard about it, and I've always kind of just brushed it off because it's he said, she say. What's starting to happen is just a lot of coincidences, right? So that was kind of where the video stemmed from yesterday, is you've got a lot of things kind of just starting to add up. And so, look, I responded to that. What's your response to that part so far?
Yeah, let me address that. So the notion of On3 being biased or not isn't percolating. Okay, the notion of bias in the recruiting industry is a steady constant over time. Look, I founded Rivals, 24/7 Sports, and now On3. And invariably throughout these ranking releases, there is going to be a few, if you're lucky, unhappy fan bases that don't like the result. And so, with On3, maybe now it's Florida this week, maybe it's somebody else next week. What I'm here is really to defend the processes and the people of our business. And again, this isn't our first rodeo. I went through this with 24/7 Sports. I started it from scratch. And the same processes that we use at 24/7, and many of the same people that we used as scouts are now leading that charge for On3. And I'm happy to explain, any and all part of that. Look, I see the sequencing of Florida commitments that are ranked less than the other three services. Okay, I see that. And my answer to that is that we could care less about what the other services rank players. And I've always championed our guys. Look, On3 ranks first, number one. We rank first, others follow. But I champion our guys that run that. The last people in the world to pay any attention to as it relates to scouting and grades are the other recruiting services, because that's not how we build our model. We first build our model through our relationships with the head coaches and college coaches in the field. And after 30 years, our staff, myself, I'm not involved in it, but we have relationships, with a large swath of college coaches that have been in this thing for a long time. That helps us. And then the guy running our scouting department, he ran it for me at 24/7 Sports. If you watch Bud Elliott and his tweets and you see the success that 24/7 Sports has had at predicting draft rates, that was in large part due to Charles Power. I think we got great processes and we got a great guy leading it. And look, last point on this, Florida's ranked number 3 right now in the On3 industry ranking. Number 3, only Georgia and Ohio State are ahead of them. And so they're doing exceptionally well. And it's probably accurately placed.
So to speak to a few things that you went over, again, appreciate you kind of breaking all that down for us. But in regards to, again, the noise of the bias, right? That's just, again, it's a fanatic feeling. And I understand that. That's the fans. Like you said, one week it's Florida, next week it could be somebody else. That's just the way it goes. You're a critic site because, right, you're critiquing these recruits. That's how that goes. And so when you critique somebody or critique a a player that's part of a fan base, people are naturally going to be upset. Again, the reason why it was being brought up, and the reason why I kind of talked about it too, was some of the players, and I referenced a tweet. I don't know if you saw that clip with Denson, where he was like, "They don't like me. Here's what happened." Right. And that's kind of, again, there's a couple of scenarios that have started to lead up. And that's the reason why I even mentioned it and brought it up, because look, Florida fans are going absolutely berserk. And yes, we are ranked third, right? Florida is ranked third. They are doing exceptional. They're doing very well. And again, I've always ignored it before because it's talking season. It's numbers. It's not that big of a deal because all that matters is what's on the field. I think why it has more relevancy now, and I stated this in the video, you guys have a little more power now than you may have had in the past, and you can agree or disagree with that. My point for that was with NIL valuations, you have to believe that how many stars and what their rating is going to affect that. And if the noise, again, it's just noise, and I understand that.
I want to interrupt you here, okay? Because this is a long. I like. Let's get back and forth on this, and I don't really kind of know the question here. First of all, facts don't care about feelings. Facts don't care about feelings. Okay, and so the facts are right now that this Florida class is exceptional. It has 2 5 stars, 11 4 stars. It has a rating of 92.54. You have a quarterback who I have met personally in Nashville at the On3 Elite Series, and his father, who we don't give a first-round draft grade right now, but a lot of upside. You got some good linebackers. This is a class that Florida at this point should be happy about. Some Twitter rants and some people upset because our ratings are lower than the other 3 services is asinine.
Sure.
Like, why would we care? Why would we measure our rating against ESPN, 24/7, and Rivals? That's craziness. Like, we measure it based on our models, our contacts with the colleges and assistants and scouts. What 24/7, ESPN, and Rivals thinks about a kid is unbelievably, we could care less. And that's not disrespecting what they do, but why would we use them as a baseline for how to evaluate a player? And that's what I love about Charles Power, who leads this for us. Anyone that knows Charles, and look, I hired 200 plus people at 24/7 that I ran for 10 years. I've got 200 employees at On3. Find me one that will say that Charles Powers is biased towards any school. Charles Powers' probably kryptonite is that he could care less about the school part. Now, that's also his gift. And when you go back and you look at 24/7's draft rates, okay, and you look at the success of the recruiting industry, Steve Wiltfong, Barton Simmons played a really key role. But the person that has led that scouting, okay, is Charles Power, who heads that up now for On3. And I dare say that when we look back 3 or 4 years from now, we're going to see the work that Charles has done in this class, and we're going to applaud that.
Is there a reason you keep referring? Is there a reason you keep referring to 247 and Rivals? Because I haven't mentioned them once nor compared them to you, so I don't know where the reasoning.
Okay. Yes, because the baseline of the complaint is that we are ranking players lower than the other services. That's the baseline of the complaint.
Okay. So
that's the only thing you can be complaining about if you're a Florida fan, because Florida, do you really think you have the number 1 class right now? We have you number 3.
No, not at all.
And so you're winning. We got you 3.
Look, I think so. Okay, hold on. I think it's. So what I was trying to get to was what I'm trying to, the point that people are getting upset with. And again, all I'm giving to you is delivering to you what has been said. And it kind of boiled up to the top yesterday.
A lot of Twitter bots, though. A lot of Twitter bots. I mean, a lot of unnamed people, again. So hold on. Has Napier come out? We have great relations with the Florida staff. Okay. There hasn't been a single complaint from anyone on the Florida staff to our group, who we are incredibly connected with. Okay. So number 2, and I was thinking about this. I have on my Florida staff Keith Niebuhr, Corey Bender, Nick, and Zach. I have put my money where my mouth is in the Florida market.
Great guys.
Hired a hell of a group. And I'll say this, Keith Niebuhr, who publishes that site, the lead recruiting guy, okay, If I had to name 5 guys in this industry over the years that have kicked ass, relationships on the road, given feedback, I'm going to struggle to even come up with 5 that I can put in the same vein as Keith Nieper, who runs Gators Online for us. So, number 1, facts don't care about feelings. Number 2, the same person that has run this industry's scouting for literally the last 6-7 years is running it for On3 right now. Number 3, the Florida Gators are ranked number 3 overall in our team recruiting ranking. Okay, that's a pretty damn good case right there that On3 is seeing and measuring accurately the success that Florida's having in the recruiting ranks and our results.
So, okay, so let me ask, you said Charles Powers, he does the rankings. He's the sole person that does the rankings, correct?
No, there isn't a sole person by any means, because we have 200 employees. Our first order of operation and scouting is to take the feedback from the college coaches, the college assistants in the field to identify an order of players. When DeMarco Murray tells me, okay, or tells one of our people that this running back is generational talent, I listen to him. We listen to him. So that's the starting of the process. All that data comes into a group that Charles manages and oversees. Okay, and so he is the final arbiter of those rankings, but they're well vetted throughout the process by numerous people.
All right. Okay. So I got the notion that when you said that, it was just him. So that's why I was confused. I was like, how does one guy do that?
That would be impossible.
So
yeah.
I want to kind of go back to what you were stating, because again, we're talking about, you said facts don't care about feelings. In a clip that just got retweeted by Josh Pate, kind of taking a jab at me because I raised the question, why respond to user 24679?
Ryan Barbecue.
I have been criticized of that. I do that. I find myself trying to get into it's just it's human nature. You see somebody kind of taking a jab, because again, facts don't care about feelings. If everything you just stated, you've got a great base, the UF supports you, all these things. Why bother to respond? Now, before you answer that question, the reason why the video was even created was because I did see you respond, and I'm like, okay, well now it's like he's responding to it, trying to defend it.
Easy. This is easy because there's people in that text that are legitimate people. And so I'm just responding in that thread. Yes.
Okay.
I'm just responding. And look, here's the thing. If you know anything about me, okay, I respond on Twitter to our customers. I go on message boards and post. So, in addition to like running and listen, and in all transparency, DJ is the only player that I have ever seen on Florida that I've watched on tape. I've spoken to him. I got to know him in Nashville, and I just so impressed with him and his dad. I don't follow these athletes. I can't name 20 of these kids that are in this class. Okay. But what I do is I do get out on Twitter and I get out on the message boards and I champion our processes, because I am definitely proud of what we're building here. We're not perfect. Charles Power and our group, we're going to miss on some rankings and some scouting. But the notion that there is bias against, okay, is lunacy. And anyone in the industry at 24/7 that has worked with any of our people, okay, and anyone at On3 will attest that there's none of that. This notion that Chad Simmons is part of the recruiting ranking and scouting process is so comical, in the sense that when I recruited Chad over from Rivals, he said, Shannon, I just have one condition. I want a great relationship with the athletes, the players, and the coaches. And in order to do so, and to come over to On3, I demand I have nothing to do with the ranking and scouting process. I want to be completely agnostic with the athletes so I can have that relationship to cover them from a media side. So in responding to those tweets, listen, I see there's a lot of bots, a lot of stupidity, and a lot of like heroes behind keyboards. But when there's an opportunity for me to defend our processes and our people, I don't care if it's a bot or I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I typically will stand up for our brand. Now, with that said, we screw up a lot of things. I'm not sitting here saying that we've got all the answers. And what we've got to do as an early stage company at On3 is to better communicate our processes, and get our people. Charles Power, first thing I said to him this morning, get in on the Gators Online message board, talk to these fans, give them feedback, give them information. They deserve that. And that's where we got to get better.
Look, and I think this is a good step. I mean, obviously talking about it, and if I don't know how much of the video you watched the clip. I'm simply questioning what has been happening. And again, if fans are frustrated, like I said earlier, perspective becomes reality. Perception. The perception is that there is whether it's true or not, it's starting to steamroll a little bit. So let's kind of go past the fans and the Twitter bots, right? What about the players? What about Denton tweeting that out? Kind of, he circled On3, took a snapshot, right? Is that just a frustrated
what did he say? He fell
70 spots, I think.
Read it. He fell 70 spots or whatever, and then I think did he compare versus the other recruiting services again?
I think he took a screenshot of where he was. It's just a picture of On3. It says just a friendly reminder: On3 recruits and Charles Power having ranked at number 19 in the beginning of the spring went up on every website but On3. Somehow I dropped 70 spots.
Again, so the up on every website. Okay, first of all, I would like to say this. Okay, statistically, moving 70 spots, moving 10 spots, 50 spots, those aren't big variances of moves, okay? And so let's be clear. That is a problem that fans have when they see a kid go from 20 to 100, or they see a kid go from 120 to 150. Those statistically are small moves, okay? And we have to move those. Now, a lot of times we're actually moving a player down, and a lot of times we're just moving players ahead of that player. And so there's an adjustment period that happens, and we're very transparent in that process that you get. The comparison set to the other recruiting services, though, doesn't matter. And that's the part I want to continue to lean on. We do not use, no offense to them, okay? But I have always been adamant. It bothers me if you go, listen, you guys want to think something's funny? Look at basketball recruiting. That's the greatest group of groupthink I've ever seen in my life. Literally, you look through the services, and it's like, he's ranked 5, he's ranked 5, he's ranked 6, he's ranked 7. At least football actually doesn't groupthink as much. I wish there was less groupthink, and I think the services would be better. But I don't, listen, an athlete being upset because he moved 70 spots, I can't help that.
Sure.
Again, that's yeah.
Yeah, and I understand you can't control that. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's going to happen. It's just like a fan. But my thing is, if players start coming out and they're saying, "Hey, they have an issue with me," because he's stating that, "Hey,
couple players, our feedback with players is phenomenal. We have incredible relationships with them. The number of players that complain on Twitter about On3 or 24/7 or Rivals over the years, I can't even count them. So, you can't, how many players did we rank and not rank? And then you have what, one?
So look, I think
two?
That's a strong arm response in a sense, like, hey, we have all these people that love us. Okay, and you're right. That's great.
I didn't say that. I didn't say love us. See, there's a difference.
Respect us.
You're taking
okay.
Nope. Are just not challenging. You're saying that there is a boiling point with players coming out with a notion on their ranking. I'm saying statistically there's not. You've had one you've mentioned. Is there another one? Maybe.
Well, so what I was getting to earlier is that, look, I think with the valuations are becoming more important because of NIL. You have to do you agree that their valuations are going to mean more to them than they had in the past? Because you've seen in the past guys like Star. I don't care about the Stars because look, they probably weren't happy with their ranking Stars. Yes, they carry more weight than they ever have before because of NIL. So maybe in the past because of their value. Maybe in the past you didn't have as much pushback because, like guys would say, I don't care what the ranking says. I'll prove to you on the field that ranking's not true, right? But now this is going to impact.
We haven't had pushback yet, though. We haven't had pushback yet. 2 players out of all that we rank and rate and value. We value every high school, college football player 10th grade up. What's that number? Well, I think we value something like 19,000 kids.
Sure.
Okay? You can't make a long list. There's not a laundry list of disharmony here. When there is, let's talk about it. But one player falling 70 spots on Twitter, because the other service, I just can't. We're not there yet. And I'm telling you, if we are there, we will work on it and address it. We're not a finished product. No one in media, your Zillow rating isn't always perfect. Your Kelley Blue Book rating isn't always perfect.
I don't
understand that.
Look, I preface this in the beginning. You guys are you critic. You're a critical site, right? You make opinions. You make adjustments based on what you feel and believed, and based on what you've been doing for a very long time. As all we were doing was just responding to what you guys are putting out. And we had a question mark, right? We have our thoughts and opinions about it, and we were criticizing, like, hey, we feel that there's an issue here, right? So, like you're saying, that we're kind of going back and forth, like we're all in the same boat here. Like, yeah, nobody's perfect. I'm not claiming for you guys to be perfect. I don't think that at all. Again, and you're answering all the questions perfectly, as I expected that you would. Of, hey, all that it is just guys stirring stuff up, but you have an unhappy fan base. The reason you're here and you said, hey, let's talk about it, is because it's loud enough for you to go, hey, we got to do something. And that was the reason why I made a video, because I was like, it's getting louder than it has before. And that's where it all stemmed from.
Now, let me say this. That's not true. Okay. It is not getting louder than it's been before.
Okay.
As I said, the last 15 years, 12, 13 years that I've been actively doing this, I've done this for 27. This always occurs. Okay. It's minimized when you better explain processes and the people behind the processes. On3, we celebrate our 2nd year anniversary in 19 days now. And so we haven't had the opportunity, even though it's the same, group of people plus a few, we haven't had the same opportunity yet to galvanize and communicate those processes and the people that have been doing it the same way. I am on here to defend this notion that we have a bias against any school. That's it. Or any fan base. There's no justification on the planet when I spend $500,000 or more on salaries, specifically for a Florida market, handpicked one of my top 3 best manager reporters of all time in Keith Niebuhr to lead the operation, that On3, and I would be foolish enough to have a bias, or an organization have a bias against a fan base. That's all I'm defending.
I appreciate the money put into the beat writers, because I appreciate the work that they do, but I don't think that supports the notion that there's no bias there. Because
of course it does. Why would we want to do anything?
Because Florida Gators football is incredible and their fan base is insane. So you go where the fans are. If you go look at Colorado, there's no. Sorry.
So we would intentionally hurt it. So we would do things that would intentionally sabotage an enormous investment in a marketplace. We listen.
Would it be crazy to think that a recruiting site would create stories? That you wouldn't create a story. You wouldn't want to create a story?
Huh?
That doesn't seem too far-fetched.
No, why would we create it? Our whole brand is built on authenticity and original reporting and accuracy. If you look at the On3 network of team sites and how long they've been around and the amount of news that they break and the people that we hired, there is nothing clickbait or sensationalized about On3. We are an authentic college brand hiring authentic college reporters, okay? And Florida, with the investment that we have, the relationships that we have, with Strickland, with Napier, and all the people there, we are invested in the success of the Florida program as much as anyone, okay? And that's the message there. So, I can't say anything more than I've done today to communicate the way that we do this.
Sure.
I can't get into how a certain small group of people feel.
Sure.
And I'm going to try to do a good job whenever we release these things to do a better job of explaining the moves. I can't explain the moves on why a kid moves a certain way because that's not my job.
To be fair,
but I can set up the processes to do that.
To be fair, I respect you for taking this interview because I was talking the day beforehand. I was like, to be honest here, you're in a lose-lose situation, in my opinion, from the Gator fan base. I think they're gonna win. Well, let me finish. Let me finish, because not in a negative way, because I feel like people are going to already have their opinion about you. And look, you may be able to persuade them, and hopefully, like they watch this and their opinion changes. I think that'd be great, right? I would like for that to happen, to where like, hey, we can get on an even playing field. It's more understanding. I felt that, look, because people's opinions are pretty much already made up, and they may not feel like, again, you don't think so?
That's asinine. Fuck no.
Why not?
We're just starting. Do you think people's opinions are made up over Zach and Nick and Corey and Keith? They're the representatives of On3. No, there's no possibility. That is a very, very short-sighted view that people, okay, a very small lynch mob group on Twitter, in a recruiting process, it's not even close yet to being finished.
Sure.
Okay. On3 ranks the Florida Gators number 3 in the recruiting rankings. Okay. Number 3, only behind Georgia and Ohio State. Facts don't care about feelings. All right. What else we got to talk about? Because I can't.
No, you can't. I get it. You can't sit here all day. Yeah, no, I think you've done a great job. Yeah. I think the next part I kind of want to address, you tweeted about Newberg and Simmons, those guys being talents. Yeah. And you referring back to, sure. You're referring just a minute ago, you were talking about kind of guys, being reporting and reporting the news. And because I said, hey, you were like, why would I invest money? And I said, hey, because you could create a story. And you're like, why would I do that? Well, again, Newberg and Simmons, those guys are talents, i.e. they create opinionated stories. Not all of their things that they say are facts. They have feelings in their approach to the situation. Same thing with J.D. Pickle. Those are feelings. They're using facts to maybe approach.
Let me address those guys very specifically. Okay. Number one, Chad Simmons is a reporter for us. Everything he does is firsthand. Chad Simmons spends more time on the road. Sorry.
Isn't he the director of recruiting?
Director of recruiting media. So he has no involvement in scouting or ratings. He spends 20 out of 30 days a month going and interviewing kids. He has nothing to do with the rating process. He is told what players are rated X. He goes and covers them, and he covers them better than anyone in the space. Okay. He is our lead dog, firsthand reporter. Okay. Media reporter. Josh Newberg was hired from the Florida State 24/7 site to come over and be a recruiting host as we build out our video show. Okay, so Josh works with and interviews people like Chad and Sam Spiegelman and all of our various talents. Josh also has no input in any possible way with the scoutings or the rating. I'm talking about those two people in particular in that tweet.
So the reason I brought those up, because those two guys have been involved to a certain extent. I mean, Josh Newberg broke the news in a way about the Austin Simmons situation, about him reclassifying and committing to Florida, which ended up not happening, and he flipped to Ole Miss. And I know what you're going to say. That's recruiting. Things happen. Things change. And I don't disagree with you. That's just part of it. That's just the way of the land. I think where the frustration came from, and again,
did he break the news? I'm just asking. I don't know.
He did.
I don't know who this. Okay, yeah, I don't even know who this recruit is.
Okay, so this news was broke by On3 and Josh Newberg on his channel. He created the video first.
Josh Newberg broke it.
Yeah, I think
I'm getting.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Josh Newberg per Keith Napier, I believe.
Okay, so Keith broke it. Not Josh. Josh again is the host of the show. There's a big difference.
Sure.
No, Keith brings.
My thing is, kind of like
what is your question? Because I want to know specifically how to answer. I know nothing about this recruit. I'm just trying to figure out what you're asking here.
So, because again, we're talking about the noise getting louder. So these are situations that have occurred. And again, it's most of the time just crazy fans. And I hear this is the part that I think hopefully you and I are on the same page of. I'm an understanding of that. Look, fans are fanatics. They can spin things to a certain.
But I thought we addressed the noise thing earlier.
I know.
There's nothing that I can say about the noise of the fan. I'm here addressing it today, and I don't think It's what, again, so what is specifically a question?
Yeah, because the question mark with some of the guys that you're referring to as talent, because they feel that, hey, these guys, you have a power with being an On3, a big site that people go to for reliability.
Okay.
The feeling is, and it's a feeling, facts don't care about feelings, I know we're going to go with this, but look, he broke that news.
Yeah. What is the feeling again? There's a feeling of what?
The news was broke by him, which wasn't broke by anybody else.
It was broke by
Florida,
Keith Niebuhr, Florida site, or by Josh? Okay. Broken by Florida guy. Yes.
Yep, per Florida, per On3, who is part of Florida, yes, but nobody else broke the news.
Per Gators Online. Per Gators Online. Gators Online.
Okay.
Yes.
So either way, that happened. And then there's obviously the Jaden Rosado situation, which Dave had more questions on that with how that was written about.
Okay.
Oh, am I allowed to talk now?
Yeah, you can go, Dave.
So back when the Rosado situation went about, I'm close with Eddie Rojas. I've worked with him at Gator Collective. I kind of work with Florida Victorious now. The whole article, I won't say the whole article was wrong, but there was a lot of statements that were not right in that article. And it happened a long time ago. So details, obviously, they left my head. But I talked to Eddie on the phone. He said, yeah, a lot of it, nobody reached out to him. Nobody reached out to Jen. They got one side of the story. Like, they got Miami side and never even tried to get Florida side of it. And then later on, I think I interviewed Nick Delatorre, and he could only say what he could because of legal reasons. But why was that story broke by national writers and they didn't get both sides of the story?
So I don't know how to answer that question because I'm not the editor of On3, and you're looking back at a long, and I'm really not. I really don't know the answer. I'd be happy to dig into it and get back with you, but wasn't that story reported by On3 by Pete Nakos? Is that the? Yeah. I mean, I honestly just don't. I don't remember and couldn't defend or tell you, what the processes that On3 went through, on Miami side or Florida side. So yeah, I know that. I know. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, I just think the general frustration sometimes comes from Florida fans, not because of rankings. I'm not even talking about rankings. I don't even care about the rankings. I'm talking about sometimes things get misreported, and it happens everywhere. It just doesn't happen at On3. But it was a consistent thing that they kept getting the totals wrong. They kept reporting all this other crazy stuff, and I think they only got one side of it. And there was an agent involved. There was one side. There was Miami side. There was players involved, and then there was.
Honestly, I would know more facts and to talk about that because I am not. I am not the editor. I did not follow that story from the perspective of seeing who was sourced or not sourced. I will say this. I think that On3 does a better job than anyone covering NIL. We've got 3 full-time reporters. That's all they do. And Pete Nakos, Andy Witchery, and Eric Prispel. They are experienced reporters. The editor is Jeremy Crabtree, who's a long-time editor who knows what he's doing. So I feel really good about that group's ability to cover a very complicated space. And so does that mean that there are mistakes along the way? Absolutely. It happened, but I can't speak to technically, what processes went into covering that. And obviously it's a situation where Florida, any way you slice it, looks bad or looked bad at the time.
Yeah. And that's kind of because I've kind of been in this industry before. I've worked for Chomp Talk. I've worked at Gator Country. I've worked at, tons of sites where you have to report on some things. And I don't try to prematurely think. I'm not one of those guys that likes to try to be first or anything like that. But I think later on, in the process, if there's a national story, especially it has to do with an NIL, even if it's an NIL deal or something else, I think it's better just ask both sides before the article gets released and not just
100%. And again, I defend the fact that, those guys are seasoned reporters, and there's an editorial process in place. None of those guys can just go write a story and post it on their own. I mean, that's as old school newsroom division as you can get. and it's set up the right way. And considering how controversial NIL is, and the fact that there has been very few blowups like that, or very few things that you would take a side on. I feel good about it. It doesn't mean again that they're flawless, and that was a learning stage, I think, for a lot of people too. There was a lot of absurdity, on all sides that was going on during those days.
So I don't want to take too much of your time. Again, I appreciate you hopping on here. To kind of recap again, I know you're dismissing it like facts don't cover feelings, and I hear you, and I think kind of hearing you kind of talk about too. Obviously, you're overseeing everything. You're not just seeing Florida football. That's the least of your worries. Obviously, we're in it. We're constantly involved with it, and that's kind of where we were coming from. Where like it feels like, and look, the Jaden Rosado situation, Florida's just as guilty, but how things were reported, that's kind of where things were stemming from. But the last question I have, and I asked this question at the end of my little rant yesterday about the entire situation, was just questioning why the move for a certain player, right? The only person that made sense to me for the move was DJ, because he played at your Elite 11 camp. I was like, look, there was a lot of negative publicity that came out of that camp about DJ Lagway. So I expected him, honestly, to move down just because of the noise that came out from that. The other players, I could be wrong here, but not much football hasn't played. Maybe there were some camps that were talked about. I guess the question, again, shorten it up here, why the moves? Is there an explanation for that, or is that kind of like going back to?
I would like to address why the moves, why the new ranking, not address any moves of the Florida commits.
Sure.
I have no clue.
No, in general, not individually, in general. Yes.
Okay. So number one, we have a lot more track data than we had. Number two, we have a lot more official visit data. So we know the 6'3" kids that are 5'11" and a half. Number whatever that is, number three, we've had an enormous amount of time to gather high risk situations as it relates to which kids are at a higher risk because of the way they're raised, or all the things that we would never say publicly. So there's also some camps. There's a lot more staff feedback. There's a lot more, hey, is this, Brian Hartline, is this your number one wide receiver? Or is this your number one wide receiver? And DeMarco Murray, what do you think about this running back? And look, I'm just throwing those two guys' names out because they're my close personal friends. We sample from almost every assistant out there. That is the biggest hidden gem of the entire recruiting industry. Our sampling list, our elite list, are actually built by the schools. Our order of operation is to basically use math and history and some scouting to source that information. So there's been a lot that has happened over the last 2.5 months of data collection in order to reshuffle and rebuild these lists.
So that's interesting. I'm just going to kind of leave that up to the people to decide how so to recap, you base it off size, which is interesting. That makes sense, because obviously guys say they're 6'2" and they're 180, and then they get to officials and they actually weigh in, they're 5'9", 175, which obviously is going to impact things a little bit. Secondly, their upbringing, that's an interesting one, right? Again, their risk versus reward, right? What's going to bring into play. So again, this is great to hear. It makes definitely a difference.
I was always questioning that too, because I know that there's camps, and then that's why some of the ratings happen during the off season. But when no football's being played, I'm like, oh, why are all these things jumping all over the place? So I guess you kind of cleared that one up.
Because these kids are actually going and visiting with schools, and if you've got a player highly ranked and two visits in a row, he falls asleep at the head coach's table and doesn't look him in the eye, doesn't pay any attention, and risk factors go up on those athletes as far as their ability to stay in a program and do what, then you can bet they're going to fall in our ratings and rankings. And that plays as much to do with it, as the way they're built. You have players out there that are asking for absurd amounts of collective money, and they're only going to a school because of money, and they're not going to school because of it's whether a good fit, player development, education. Those are risk factors, and risk factors have always been a common denominator, in our rankings at Rivals, 24/7 Sports, and now On3.
So you said you speak with Brian Hartline, the wide receiver coach at Ohio State, who's a close friend of yours. So you go to him for suggestions on, hey, where this guy should be ranked?
No, I don't. But our people do.
Hey,
Okay.
is he taking the job at Northwestern?
I talked to him about skiing and, what car is he driving and what's it like to have, 43 wide receivers drafted in the first round and things like that. He's a friend.
So is it safe to say then, so if you're asking Brian Hartline, then you're asking the likes of Billy, Austin Armstrong, again, kind of going back to Florida with us being kind of this question about Florida, are they asking those coaches on their opinions on guys' rankings as well too? So the coaches have an input on these rankings as well?
I mean, that's what I just spent like 40 minutes talking about. The rankings are built from the feedback from the coaches that we have grown up with in this industry. I mean, that is the most critical piece of data for 24/7 for Rivals and for On3 is when a coach like a Brian Hartline and DeMarco Murray. Now, why do I use them and not use other names? I use it because those guys were successful in college and successful in the pros. Okay, so they can relate. When those guys talk about players as being, generational talents or the best this year or whatever, they have a context, that a media reporter can't give. When DeMarco Murray, who I remember where I was sitting in the Rivals suite, okay, looking at film freaking 15, 18 years ago, and when his highlight tape came on, okay, I hadn't seen a player run like him since Reggie Bush. And when I go to DeMarco, and when our guys go to DeMarco and we talk to him about football, that there's experience and there's context and there's no BS with it. Our industry is built on a math formula that says, you're only going to have so many quarterbacks drafted in the first round, and you're only going to have so many kids from Wyoming, and, just the data of it. And then it's built heavily on what the coaches think about the players. And that's the way it works.
So last little thing, and then again, I will let you go. But Miles Graham, just one example. Again, it's a tidbit. You may or may not know him.
I don't know who he is.
He's committed to Florida, but here it's an overview question. He has the last time he visited anywhere was Florida on June 9th, and prior to that, now it could be not knowledge where he's visited anywhere else, but before that was February.
I don't want to take a question about any player that I know. I've never heard of this person. I am the CEO of On3. I don't know the players. If I do, I'll tell you. I don't know who Miles is.
It's not necessarily Miles doesn't. You could use Joe Schmo, but this particular player hasn't visited anywhere since Michigan. His only place he's visited is Florida. So by you telling me that, yes, okay, you collect data from the coaches, so basically that tells me that Billy Napier and staff at Florida, because that's the only place that he's been since February, said, hey, this guy shouldn't be ranked as high as he should. Or I didn't
say that. Okay. Never would I say that. Could
I don't think you said that.
No. Could it be that other players moved ahead of this player? I don't know. Again, I can't speak to it because I don't know that situation. I don't know if that player was moved down or if players were moved up. I don't know if our people got intel from another school. I have no idea. That's not the point. I'm here to tell you how the process works.
Sure.
And the facts are this, and the facts are Florida's having a heck of a recruiting class. They're ranked number 2. Okay, let's see how it all plays out. And the group that is doing this at On3 did it at 24/7. And there's a lot of work we can do to improve it. It's not a perfect process. Okay, we make as much of it empirically data-based as we can, but it's still subjective heavily at the end.
Sure.
And we're looking to improve upon that process. It's not perfect, but it's good.
I appreciate you hopping on here. Obviously, our understanding and perception of it isn't the best either. And that's why we talk about it and we hop on every week and we try to dissect and figure it out. So look, I appreciate you coming on here and allowing us to ask you questions and batter you with nonsense, and you staying true to it. So look, I appreciate it. I'm excited to see what people have to say. I think it's more information than we've had before. So that's fantastic. And look, like you said, you guys are up and coming. And I even stated in the video, I go, look, everyone's like saying like boycott On3. I was like, they're not going anywhere. Like people still go to On3. You guys have great beat writers at Florida. We appreciate them. We appreciate Nick Del Toro. We refer to their articles all the time. I always give them shout outs when we talk about them. They do a phenomenal job there. I state that all the time. I'm not here to get into a pissing contest with you guys, but it's also, too, again, you guys are a critic, a site. Sometimes we're going to critique your thoughts and opinions, and that's all that was. So I don't have anything else.
Completely fair.
Yeah, I don't have anything else for you, Shannon. I don't think Dave does. If you have any more questions for us, you can fire away. I don't think you probably do, but
I think Shannon's got to go away. He's a business owner.
Yeah,
so he's
no,
probably
absolutely. All right, man. Thank you, man.
All right. Do you have a